Greetings once more, my YouTube friends. I have decided not to say hello, YouTube friends, because it's a rather unpleasant word when you think about hello, oh. Yeah, I'm done with oh. Anyway, greetings, much more pleasant, much nicer way to introduce whatever it is that I'm going to talk about briefly, I think. It's been a while, so I've been reflecting, thinking, experiencing, going through my, um, they're actually experiences that I don't think I've ever had before. I've transitioned into perceiving the reality that I live in has changed somewhat. I mean, it's the same, but it's also changed somewhat because I believe I am changing. I think this is something that is quite often not as focused on or understood. And I'm going to attach a link to an excellent conversation that three people had, including Howdie Mickoski, who was interacting with a fellow Mark Devlin and another fellow, I forget his name right now, but I'll attach a link. And it's an excellent conversation they were having about the nature of this existence as we experience it. And they all had their take on what it is they perceive, how they understand what they're going through, and quite frankly, they were pretty much in agreement with each other, which is good. Which is good. Agreement meaning that there is a meeting of minds going on, something that makes sense. It's not just an isolation, and it's something that they referred to as being important, being able to communicate so that there isn't a sense of vacuum. I think this was very important, something that they expressed themselves, their own sense of themselves, not being like people sitting on a hill or on a rock distant or something, but they were quite engaged with each other, appreciating the sensibility that each of them brought to bear in the conversation. This is obviously an important aspect of being us from the point of view that we're not in a vacuum. It's like whatever this reality, this realm that we exist in, it nonetheless, no matter how horrible it is in so many ways, it actually facilitates this coming together, which is quite nice. So the idea of meeting up and finding um, a sort of acknowledgement of one, and the acknowledgement of the best part of another person, rather than being sycophants and praising people for things that really don't matter, which is very interesting because we are engaged in many activities that ultimately don't really matter, in the sense that if you are, if whoever is listening to me is inclined to accept the fact that this reality is not for our benefit, it is designed to create strife, trouble, suffering, pain, hardship. No matter how many seconds of bliss you might experience, it doesn't negate millennia of pain and suffering. So it's proportionate, right? It's like you can say to yourself, oh yeah, I have a charmed life. But no matter, I've always said, no matter how charmed a person's life might be, there's always going to be somebody you have to look over your shoulder who's going to whack you behind the head, whether it's institutional or whether it's individual. There is always this kind of backdrop of something potentially going wrong and going wrong. Wrong in the sense of difficulty. Okay, I'm going to further on my admiration for how Howdie Mickoski is growing. I mean, he's not adding a lot of things that I haven't heard him say. I'm now in the middle of reading his Empty the Cave book, and it is just basically confirming things that he had said in interviews. So in a way, you don't really have to read it, but you do. It's more complete. You get more background in certain things that obviously he doesn't talk about everything. But again, my appreciation for this person is growing because number one, it makes a lot of sense. Many of the things that he says makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that is really important that makes a lot of sense is if we perceive the world as being the problem without including ourselves, this is ultimately going to spell failure, very likely failure in terms of the objective, which is not to return to this horror show, this unpleasant reality that is being fabricated and formulated for some other reason than ourselves. There is no benefit to us in this experience, ultimately. Well, the only benefit is to realize that we don't want to be here. So this conversation was extremely enjoyable from the point of view of people coming together and bringing their own take on what it is that they perceive, how this is all kind of working. I know what Mickoski is thinking. These other two were more or less on the same page. I think he was, I think, a little bit of the guide in a sense in terms of the personality. He is becoming much more of a kind of guide individual. You know, when you have a conversation or you have people getting together, there's always somebody that appears in some form or other to be able to garner the substance in something. Not that the others didn't, but it just sort of felt that way to me. Anyway, my own experience, what has been going on and things I've been thinking about, this ongoing health issue that I'm having has become a little more complicated. And there are issues that have now arisen that are curious. It's kind of peculiar because with the prostate cancer clinical diagnosis, one could say, well, you didn't really have it or whatever. Well, something is wrong. And whatever the procedures and therapies I decided to go through, I believe have been very instrumental in pushing me in the right direction healing-wise, but not enough. So something else is happening in my process of going through the what is this dis-ease aspect of my life right now. There is like, and many people have stuff and things going on all the time, and maybe it's not as severe or but there's always like what the fuck is illness about? The omnipotent being who supposedly has our best interests at heart creates circumstances around us that, no fault of our own, we become afflicted. And sometimes there is fault on our own, the decisions we make. I'm not saying that there isn't any culpability or bad choices, but ultimately, even to be in a position to make those bad choices is a kind of peculiar circumstance to have set up. So, free will, all that bullshit, forget about it. All the rules that are attached to this realm in commandments and suggestions or whatever you want to call it, it makes no sense because it's either working or it doesn't work. It's like an eye in evolution. Either it works or it doesn't work. You don't have an eye evolving over 1 million years. It's stupid. It doesn't make sense, right? The same way, whatever this creation is, no matter how beautiful you think it might be, and there are aspects, obviously, of its beauty when you see the vistas and the oceans and the natural world, all those kind of things. Yes, but in a bigger picture, it's fantastic. But when you get into the nitty gritty, it sucks because at every moment there's a worm being killed or a bird being eaten by a mouse, or no, by a cat, or a mouse being eaten by a cat. So the predator thing is continuously happening. So anyway, here are some reflections and thoughts. As I find myself through my illness, what I'm beginning to realize is I'm going down a path. I've always been a contrarian. I've always had this sense of the world is not as it appears to be, which is why I make paintings. I've always had this desire to make paintings, which has substantially subsided in the last couple of months. I did manage to work on a series. Some of the paintings behind me are part of the series I called Northland. There may be some significance to this I haven't really thought about, but I worked on a series of I've done about 12 or 14 paintings on this series, and it's not finished. There's 3 more artists that I want to include in this synopsis of paintings based on a group of 7 painters in Canada. You can research that. They were a group of about 9 significant artists that I have done 5 or 6. I've got it. I have to do 3 more. And it's a series of paintings I want to get back to, but I have no inclination. I'm just feeling myself to be removed from it, and I'm not missing it. I'm not missing sort of like the idea, oh, geez, I've always had this feeling of I'm a painter, I'm an artist, and if I don't go to the studio or do some research or do some drawing when I'm not painting, and all that stuff is now gone. It's like, okay, thank you, Mickoski. It's kind of like looking at myself, who I am as a person. It's a kind of life review without the direct kind of review. He did it over, he said 4 years. He did a year by year or month or even day by day life review. That's got to be pretty intense. Wow. Anyway, it's not that intense with me, but there's still a review going on in terms of the essence of who I believe has motivated my action. The person that I am has been doing art, painting, creativity. And I'm not disregarding. I am not saying it was not something important for me to have done or to be still doing. And I will talk about this now because Mickoski was a creative individual. He was a comedian, and he threw all that away because that's just another distraction, possibly, very likely, possibly, yes, I wouldn't argue with that, that you're engaged in an activity that is just taking you into more deeply into this simulation, this shit show of a reality, and it seduces and pays you money and all whatever that is about. But what Mickoski has not addressed, what I'm thinking about and reflecting on, is the idea of creativity. And you could easily spin creativity the way it's being represented nowadays in terms of museums and the music world and the visual world, and anything creative has this very nasty slant to it quite often. It's very depressing and ugly and unpleasant. And people actually know this by walking through museums. They scratch their heads and they don't know what the hell is going on. And Maria and I recently were in Spain, in Madrid, and I took the opportunity to go through the Prado and the Thyssen and the Reina Sofia, the main 3 kind of museums in Madrid. Fabulous city. Fabulous to go to museums there and look at it. And one of the things Maria said in the Prado, she came up to me and she said, it's really depressing. They're all hurting each other in some way, or they're all looking really unpleasant and unhappy. And it's true. It's a litany and a record of people hurting each other, torturing each other, or being really nasty in some form or other. And it's true. It's like creativity. And these are brilliant paintings. I mean, we're talking about like the pinnacle of people like Goya or Velázquez, Frans Hals, people that were even a softer kind of artist. They all had this aspect to them that they exposed the shit show in some form or other. And it's valuable to me because it is a record that it's not only in the last 50 years or 100 years or 200, it's a record of 500-600 years of shit show going on, right? Valuable going through it. Besides, as a painter, I appreciate the extreme talent that is on display, that what a human being is capable of doing. And beyond the message, in other words, the message for me is not the painting, uh, the way it represents something, but what it says about the creative process, of something that is what I would call inspirational to dig into something. So when I think about creativity, my conclusion now isn't making a painting that looks a certain way because I want to communicate a story or whatever. Always there a little bit, but it communicates when it's done well, and it doesn't have to look any particular way, although the classics had phenomenal rendering abilities, eye-hand coordination. But what struck me was that it can be quite inspirational for a person to look into themselves, to look at that part of themselves they have either been discouraged to look at, because creativity is always, sort of like something that you have to study, and or not creativity, but to be able to express yourself in a way that is valuable to someone else, you have to study and get, involved in decades of, commitment, and maybe a lifetime of commitment to something. No, bullshit. No. What really occurred to me was that I went on this path of painting because I was inspired by what I saw, either by teachers, mentors, or the my my mentors who had died, people 2, 3, 5, 600 years ago, 1,000 years ago. I don't that kind of level of a human being has an ability to be more than what we're programmed to do. And if we are, as I believe, in a simulation, one of the people interviewed talked about the idea of programming behind all this. Obviously, manipulation as like MK Ultra and all those kind of things that go on, that the bastards are involved in, like the shit show, the COVID shit show, and all this manipulation. But there is also an aspect that hadn't been addressed by Mickoski, which is possibly the idea of a coding, like a numerical thing, like the gematria guy, or even Matt from Quantum of Conscience, dissecting the ridiculousness of how things make absolutely no sense, but they're supposed to be real. And this is a kind of coding that goes on, and part of the coding that is residual within each human being is a coding. We're part of the coding, where, as like Mickoski said, if you think this is a simulation out there and you're not part of it, you're making a big problem. So I'm acknowledging, I'm saying, yes, there is a coding the way I am that is preventing me from actually reaching something that is essential for me to be able to transition out of this shit show. And I'm saying that the creative part in a human being can be very inspirational towards wanting a solution to this problem that we're facing. It's not going to be the ultimate, it's not the panacea, the go-to. There's other things, like Mickoski talks about this, this ability to find an emptiness without being destroyed by it. The ability to have whatever has been built up in this coding that we are to be removed completely. Can we function? Can I function without thinking of myself being an artist, a painter? Something I've done for 55 years and associated myself with. So there is a huge part of me that identifies with being an artist. When a person says, what do you do? Well, I just don't sit in a chair, I make paintings. But that is falling by the wayside. The idea of having made paintings for my own self, as it is most meaningful, is that I was able to take something, I was able to interpret an essential part of myself in a painting. In other words, express something of an essential part of me. So if I go back to the idea of the spark, the essence, the creative process, the creative act, in fact, can inspire a person to look for that spark. I believe that is the underlying quality that I would associate myself with now in reflection. Not like, oh, I made paintings and they're good or bad or whatever. No, it's something that led me toward accepting or being able to find an opening to go deeper into this essential aspect of myself. And possibly, I'm not sure yet, but it is a very deeply ingrained thing in me, having made paintings. All artists who are involved are very committed. It's not like a frivolous thing or a decoration. Like I've always said, I'm not interested in decorating. So there is an aspect in my way of doing it that is, it needs to be fundamentally deeply connected to something that I am, that I feel. And when I say these words, what I am connected to and feel is not part of this realm, not part of this shit show, okay? So I'm not dismissing the creative aspect the way I believe Mickoski may have set it aside and say it's not important. He's doing his garden and his wood and he's living in minus 30 temperatures and he's got to have wood and all that. Yeah, so you take care of yourself and make sure you stay alive. He moves into a very unpleasant, hostile environment in order to keep focused, maybe. I don't know what that's about. But I'm saying the creative act, in my mind at this point, I may change my mind, I don't know. But I'm saying it is actually very instrumental in being inspirational towards a recognition of this essence that is will need to be identified somehow within each of us if we have any chance or hope of escaping this vicious cycle, this hamster wheel. So that's number one, what I wanted to talk about. Number two is, in my own circumstances of my personal life becoming a lot more difficult in some ways, Maria's having difficulties, and I'm needing to be much more involved in a day-to-day help. And it's creating a kind of dysfunction in me as well, because I'm not going to go into it specifically yet. There's stuff going on within me that I'm questioning, and I need to go through this, obviously, in order to find again something within myself that is really important. So I've always been helped by Maria, and I've helped Maria, and that interaction has been very fruitful, rewarding in so many different ways, also difficult, but it is adding now another level of complexity to what I'm struggling with. So here's kind of like an interesting incident. The part of Empty the Cave that Mickoski's talking about when he's dealing with near-death experiences, and people who have come through, and apparently thousands and thousands of people have had near-death experiences in some way or another, and there has been research done on this, and there seems to be a pattern, two aspects of this near-death experience. One is one of extreme pleasantness and going to the light, and going to the light basically means going back to the shit show. The shit show is light, is energy, is frequencies, whatever. You're going toward that kind of physical manifestation that is referred to as light, and people that are in the other realm, in whatever realm you want to call it, the astral realm, as they're hanging out, they find it very seductive to go to the light. The other part of it appears to be some very unpleasant experiences that people have relayed, have recalled being in that reality and coming back to the simulation or the shit show, and having been terrified, forced, coerced through horrible experiences in the other dimension. Okay, so what has recently happened, I've talked a little bit about this, that I've had some apparitions that are rather unpleasant. Some are, some aren't, but some really disconcerting apparitions where I wake up and there are entities still hovering around me, not for long, seconds. But they're there enough for me to be aware and be kind of disconcerted by it. People say, "Oh, I'll just ignore it." Well, when you're in a in a dream state, things aren't as easily controlled, if you want to put it that way, or digested. It's more like an emotion, a feeling. So I've had these apparition things happen. Quite a ways back too, when I lived in Spain, they happen occasionally, but especially recently they've happened. But now another element has entered, and that is the dream world. And the dream world is curious. It's not really been, I don't think it's really understood. What the hell are dreams? What's going on in dreams? And I make an association with this, this shit show reality and the manipulation going on, and dreams being actually a very interesting portal, a very easily accessible portal for the entities to have influence on us. So what I have found since I've been digging into this Mickoski material and coming to stuff myself in terms of who I believe I am, what's going on within me, what this experience I'm having right now in my life for the last 2.5 years called an illness, what the hell is going on? I'm beginning to understand something is quite untoward. It's not just, oh yeah, you're just sick and you got to get healed, or you do stuff and you heal and you diet and you fast and you do this protocol. No, no, it's got nothing to do with that. There is an underlying subversion that is being perpetrated on me. That's what I'm deciding. And the reason I'm thinking this now is because particularly one dream that I had that was absolutely horrendous. I have never had a nightmare on this level of nightmarishness, where the torture is off the chart. The images that I'm getting are so brutal. I mean, even in horror movies, it doesn't. I don't watch horror movies anymore, but even what I imagine to be in horror movies, or when you look at Full Metal Jacket and all those, the Deer Hunter and all the things that they conjure, how horrible life can be. Well, this was on that level and plus. So I'm thinking, where the hell is this coming from? What the fuck is going on here? Where all of a sudden, is it my day-to-day life? Is it like a horror story? Well, it's not been easy, but it's not been a horror story. So where is this coming from? And then my conclusion was I noodled on this a bit, and it kind of felt like what people might refer to as a near-death experience, but it's in a dream. So I was being introduced to what I will face, considering my thoughts and the way I feel about this existence, what I might face when I die. This is what I thought, that my dream revealed how I will be dealt with, or how anyone will be dealt with, unless they're really solid in their nature, in their understanding of what's going on. When they enter the next realm, when we go transition, there is going to be hell to pay for the way that we set ourselves up towards that point. So, okay, there's the idea of obviously dying, which is for most people a major issue. Most avoid and deny, or, me included, I've never really been big on thinking about dying. But having had an affliction, I haven't been able to avoid it entirely, so it's been on my mind. But I'm saying what is going on is a level of manipulation where dreams can actually be the precursors to near-death experience, or literally a transition into the other dimension. Because what really is a dream? What is going on? It's so unreal. It's so disconnected to anything that I can imagine. On the other hand, there are dreams that I have that are quite pleasant, that are related to experiences I had with whatever in my day-to-day life. Yes. And then this aspect of it, this horror, this nightmare stuff that happened. Where does this come from? And it may actually be also what Mickoski refers to as a louche energy, that waking up from uh, um, these kind of experiences create enormous levels of anxiety, which adds to this energy possibly. And maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's like getting people into a state where they're actually producing energy that is quite like these cannibalistic fucks that are using us to feed themselves on our energy, on our emotions, on our feelings, good or bad. But it occurred to me, I thought I would put this out if Mickoski's listening. Be interesting to see, Howdie, what you think about a dream, especially a dream that makes no sense in the context of my day-to-day life. How are these interpretations? Am I interpreting something that is of my world and then transposing it into something? Where's that coming from? See, I don't think so. I think this is being implanted in me. I'm beginning to feel like a dream is something that is being manipulated from an external aspect of me. It's not coming from inside, like an MK Ultra idea. I don't know. It's that maybe that's not so far fetched. Maybe other people have basically come to that conclusion themselves, that a dream is basically nothing to do with you. It's some kind of uh, fucktard asshole trying to intervene in my sleep. So those were the two ideas that I had that I thought I'd noodle on and put out again. Again, admiration for Howdie and the people that he is hooking up with and talking to are also quite interesting and valuable. So I will update some more as I progress through my experience, wherever this is going to go. I'm opening my mind to possibilities. I've anyway, I'll leave it there. I will comment some more on possibly on my condition as it develops, as it evolves. So I hope that helps and adds something to the richness of your experience, and no longer the ugly greeting. I'm going to do the good greeting, meaning greetings, YouTube friends. So I'll end it there, and all the best to you, and um, yeah, creativity and dreams. What the hell is going on there, and how does it help us work through this process?